So good morning, students. So let's start with a new lecture I want to start with the array and the types of array. So let's start with the array. So array is what? It is a collection of elements of similar data type. That means similar data type means you can just see the node that this node I have uploaded for you. So please go through that node. So it is a collection of elements of similar data types. That means I want to store more than one element having the similar data type. That is, I have used the word homogeneous. That means either that can be of integer or float or character, etc. That means array is a collection of elements. That means I want to store more than one number of elements in a single variable name that must be homogeneous. I have written the syntax here there. That means data type, array name, and size. That means what? This is a data type. Which type of data I want to store? What is the name of that data and what is the size? So what I have told earlier, it is a collection of elements. That means an array is a collection of elements. So how many number of elements are stored in that particular array? That is defined by this size. Let's say I have given the example int array 3. That means what I have written here there, it is an array of integer data type that can hold 3 data elements. That means first data type I have written integer. That means it will take store three number of integer value. And what is the name of the three different three values? Array, a double r. So now problem arises that all the three elements are stored with the name array having integer data type, but I want to access different elements of an array. For that, what I have written, index are used to represent the element starting from 0. That means, let's say I have given this example, I have written integer array 3. That means this is a complete array having three elements. What are the three elements? Let's say 5, 2, and 8 are the three elements that is stored in the array. All are integer. So that means 5, 2, and 8 are integers. So what is the size of the array? Three elements I want to store. So size is 3. Now let's say I want to access 5 out of this 5 to 8, because the name of 5 to 8 all are array, A double R. But I want to access 5 only. So that's why index are used to represent the element. So what I have written, array of 0, and I have written index always start with the 0. It always start with the 0. That I can say with the name, and this is known as the index. So that means array of 0 is 5, array of 1 is 2, and array of 2 is 8. So I can use this index to represent the single elements. So I have written here there, see here there are three elements 5 to 8 which take space in the memory in consecutive manner. I want to just focus on this consecutive manner because this is also very important property of an array. Consecutive manner means 5 is stored just 5, sorry, 2 is stored just after 5, 8 is stored just after 2. That means 5, 2, 8 all are stored in a consecutive manner. That means one after another. And this property is known as contiguous. I have written here, contiguous in nature. That means what? It is stored in a consecutive manner in the memory, one after another. So coming back to this, to access each element, index is used like 5 is stored at array of 0. What I have told earlier, 5 is stored at array of 0, 2 is stored at array of 1, and 8 is stored at array of 2. Similarly, this is a mistake, this will be stored at 2. So coming to the next point, contiguous in nature. I have told earlier, all the data elements should be stored in a consecutive manner. It has a fixed size. That means what? Size must be given at the time of declaration. When I am defining that there must be an array of integer, So I have to define what is the size of the array. That means how many elements we are going to store in that array. Like I have written an example, int array a double r, and that is the array, first bracket and third bracket. So this bracket defines a double r is a variable having array, and that should take integer. So the size is not defined. That means uh, how many elements we are going to store, that is not, so this is not valid. Now coming to this, size of an array is given by number of elements into size of each element. If I define, let's say, go to the previous example, int array 3. That means what is the size of this variable a double r? From the third bracket, we can say a double r is a variable name which defines an array. But what is the size of the array? That means there are three elements. One element is integer. So if I talk about 16-bit compiler, that means integer value is taking 2 bytes, sorry, 2 byte. So that means there are three number of elements, 5, 2 and 8. So 5 is taking 2 bytes, 2 is taking 2 bytes, 8 is taking 2 bytes. That means what? 2 plus 2 plus 2. That means number of elements into size of each element. That's I have written here. See. So number of elements multiplied by size of elements. So in the given example, what I have done, there are three number of elements, and if I am taking 16-bit compiler of integer type, so it will take 2 bytes. So 3 into 2, that is 6 bytes. This should be bytes. Now I have told the C uses 0 to n minus 1 as the array bound. As I have told, the index is always start with the 0. That means if there are n number of elements, so the last index will be n minus 1 because we are starting with 0. So what I have written, int array of 5, these are the elements 6, 5, 1, 9, 2. So this goes from 0 to 4, that is 0 to n minus 1. I have given the example also. Array of 0, 6, array of 1 is 5, array of 2 is 1, and it goes on like this. It always start with the 0 and the last will be n minus 1. Now the types of array. So generally there are basically there are two types of array, 1D array and the multi-dimensional array. So whatever we have learned till now, that is all 1D array, one dimensional array. In simple, we can say that is simple array. That means array with only one row. So we have looked at this. There is only one row with more number of columns or more number of data, but there is only one row. In multi-dimensional, where they with more number of rows and columns. So that means there are more than one number of row and there are more than one number of column also. For this syllabus, we have to only go through 2D array. This can be possible 3D array, 4D array, 5D array. But for our syllabus, we have to go through 2D array only. So how? So this 1D, one-dimensional array we have already learned. Just a recap of one-dimensional array and compare with the multi 2D array, especially multi-dimensional 2D array. So in 1D array, what we have done, integer array 5. That means this is a 1D array of size 1 into 5. If I just define in the multi-dimension, that means we have gone through the maths that in matrix form, multi-dimensional, that is row into column. So in 1D array, there are always be, this must be always 1, that is 1 number of row and 5 number of columns. And in multi-dimensional, let's say only talk about 2D dimensional. So 2 is the number of row and 3 is the number of column. So this is generally a matrix. We can say 2D array of size row into column, 2 number of rows and 3 number of columns. So I have given the example. So how can we define? So 2 is represents row and 3 represents column. So I have defined how many elements are there. 3 into 2, total 6 number of elements are there in 2D array. 5, 3, 7, 1, 6, 8. So these are the elements stored in the row. So now I have written 5, 3, 7, 1, 6, 8. How we can store in the memory or how it should look like. So see, I have written like this: 5, 3, 7, 1, 6, 8. That means all these data elements are stored in a row manner. That means first there are three number of columns, so first three data is stored in the first row, the later three data elements are stored in the second row. I can define this in a simple manner like this also. 537, that means 537 are the elements of the first row and 168 are the elements of the second row. So this will look like this: 537 first row, 168 in the second row. Here just note one point, that this defining this column is mandatory, whereas defining this row is optional. Because you have, if I take this example 537 and 168, so that means if I define there are three number of columns, that means 5, 3 and 7 always stored in the first row. So please note that defining column is mandatory and defining row is optional. I have written two programs, one program for the 1D array, that is simple array, and one program for the 2D array, how to store elements in the array. So see, so I want to store, this is a simple 1D array, so array size is 4, that means it will travel from 0 to 3. So I want to take the user input, so where I want to store, say in simple program, just ampersand of a variable name, but here there is a single variable name but with different more than one number of elements. So I have used the I. That means for 0 position, I am storing one value. For 1 position, I am storing another value. So this will go on till less than 4. That means there are 4 number of elements. So it will start from 0, 1, 2, 3. So it will goes on. So and the last, I am printing the value. So this is a simple program. I have given the input output also, how this program works and how it look like. So enter number in array for 0 position, for 1 position, for 2 position and for 3 position. So this will look like 2691. I have just improvised this program to store the 2D array. So what I have done, rather than just writing a single 1D array, I have written two values, 2 for the row and 3 for the column. That means this program will use to store and print the elements of a 2D array. That means how many number of rows are there? 2 number of row and 3 number of column. So it will require 2 number of loop. One loop, this loop is responsible for row and this loop is responsible for column. So how many rows are there? 0 to less than 2. And how many columns are there? 0 to less than 3. So similarly, I have written the code, enter the value for this position. So rather than using 1D array, I have to use two value, I value and J value. I represent row and J represents column. So similarly, I have stored the value and using the same logic, I have just print the value. So it will look like I have given the code also. So enter the value of 0, 0, that is 5, 0, 1, 3, same, and it will look like this. 537168, because I have given this value. So please go through this video as well as this note. I have uploaded this note in your forum. If you have any query, you can just contact me. That's all for this video. I will share the next video later on. Thank you.